before we get into today's video, astrology requires a lot of investment of time, research, and yes, energy. If you're not in a position to be able to schedule a consultation or equally to register for one of my courses, if you could make a donation through the link that you'll see down in the description area, it really helps to keep things moving along in a nice, smooth manner and is very deeply appreciated. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the series of Ketu and Rahu, the South Node and the North Node, through the houses, which we also call the bhavas of Vedic astrology. Now, this is a series that I started a few years ago, and I've had an overwhelming number of requests to continue it, and so here we are. But if you want to go back and watch this series from the beginning, you can do that at the link that you're going to see up above. Okay, so most people, when they approach astrology in general, they tend to develop a bit of a beginner's understanding of all of the planets in general. And hey, that's great. We really need to start somewhere. Okay, but we also need to expand beyond that simplistic understanding. So, as it relates to Ketu and Rahu, the karmic points of the horoscope, most people understand Ketu as being related to previous lifetimes, and that Rahu is connected to what we're meant to do in this particular lifetime to resolve that past life karma. But there's so much more than that. And you know what? They need to serve us in the moment too, not just through an understanding of the past and the future, but in an understanding of what can I do with this right now, or what am I supposed to do with this right now? So they're important to understand in that particular regard. So I always like to start these videos, even if you've seen the other ones, with a brief explanation of what the nodes really are all about. And hey, if you'd like to take a deep dive into the positions of the nodes in your own particular horoscope, you might try scheduling either the karmic story consultation or the source and solution consultation. There we go. I got it out, both of which you can schedule at the link above. So what exactly are the nodes all about? Well, as I mentioned, maybe a smidgen of the meaning of the nodes is that Ketu relates to previous lifetimes and Rahu relates to what we're meant to do in this lifetime in order to bring karmic incompletion to completion. But it's important to understand how the nodes function. And it's also important to understand that the nodes really are one and the same. Ketu and Rahu may seem like they're two separate things, but that duality relates to the duality that exists right up here. Okay? So on one level, they're unified. And that's why they're always directly opposite each other in the horoscope. And they work in tandem. Whenever you have one that's active, the other one's going to be active in a certain way too. It's just that the one that's highlighted is going to be more active than the other. So Ketu, in its connection with previous lifetimes, it also relates to something in the here and now that we can call the security paradigm. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, for those of you who may not know what a paradigm is, it's like a belief system that we put a lot of investment into, or a lot of faith into believing, for lack of a better way to put it, right? So a security paradigm is a way of thinking that makes us feel stable. It makes us feel like, hey, you know what? I know this, right? I may not like it, but I know it. Okay. And that's the thing. And sometimes we may actually like it, but at the same time, it's not something that's really, going to serve us going forward. It's something that's going to keep us stuck, in the moment, rather than allowing us to evolve further forward into the future. And so we need to kind of move past that and move beyond that. Okay, so let's give an example of that. We may grow used to spending a lot of our time alone, but it can get awfully lonely in that particular direction, even if, venturing out into the wide, wide world seems to bring a lot of tension. Now, that's more connected to Ketu in the 12th and Rahu in the 6th. I'm just trying to give you a general idea. So, basically, the things that Ketu are related to are things that we've done before. Maybe they worked, maybe they didn't. And regardless, we either keep doing them because we keep thinking they're going to work, or if they didn't work, we just really don't know what else to do. And so we just continue trying anyway. We try the same thing over and over again, hoping that we're ultimately going to get a different result. So Rahu's job is to go, you know what? I have to yank you out of that comfort zone, and I need to kind of put you in a space where maybe you don't feel quite so secure so that you can explore those things in your life that are ultimately in need of further development. And when we're on Rahu's path, things can feel quite turbulent because we're in unknown territory. It's not this energy of going, hey, I know this, I'm comfortable with this. It's an energy of going, I don't know this, I haven't got a clue as to what's going on. And it's those periods connected to Rahu that are generally the periods when people tend to reach out to astrologers the most. So let's dive into understanding Ketu in the fourth house and Rahu in the 10th. Well, we know the fourth house can deal on many levels with emotions. And our emotions, our level of happiness or even unhappiness, is going to be a foundation, strong or weak, of how secure or comfortable we feel, right? So when you have K2 in the fourth, we become used to creating an environment that makes us feel, to a certain degree, content. Only it doesn't really make us feel content. It's as if we're convincing ourselves that, hey, you know what? I can be really content within this environment. So it's a controlled security. It's a controlled emotional pattern rather than naturally feeling, completely happy with the circumstances that we're dealing with. We are, to a certain degree, convincing ourselves that we're happy with that particular set of circumstances, right? Until, we begin to have these little rips or shreds in our reality, or we begin to have the emotional dam burst up and, just kind of emotions flow out, which tends to happen with these K2 fourth house positions. Because when you rigidly control your emotions, even if you're not fully aware that you're doing it, things will come along and kind of show you that you're not really happy. And sometimes it's just something tiny, but that something tiny causes a whole flood of emotions to come out, right? And it's because you're ignoring those things that are really important to you, which is a 10th house factor. Okay. Most people know the 10th house to be connected to career and connected to success. And we're actually going to come to those points here in a moment. But a good thing to understand is the fourth house is that place directly below the horizon at the time you're born. It's that unseen thing that you can't connect to. And so hence it relates to emotions. And those emotions are meant to support our security and our stability. Now, the 10th house is that space that's directly up above. It's interesting because that's the space that we're kind of looking up to, or to a certain degree, striving to reach. It's a height or a level that we want to be at. So the 10th house also deals with those things that we give a large degree of importance to in life, things that we hold in high esteem, if you will. Okay. So when K2 is stuck in that fourth house mentality, it kind of has it put in its face, and that happens with the fourth and the 10th house, how important the other thing is to it. Only that tends to happen on many levels through a bit of an emotional breakdown, so that the individual begins to try to bring more of those things that are ultimately more important to them into their life so that they can build a true level of emotional security or happiness or contentment, rather than one that they're kind of fabricating in order to keep things comfortable. So there you had the Ketu side, which is clinging on to something out of a need for security because, hey, this has worked, so, why reinvent the wheel? Because, well, a square wheel doesn't really work that well, and you need to roll down the road of life in a much better manner. And again, if you want to know how to make your own life roll better, again, there are several different levels of astrological service that you'll find at the link above. So let's go into security and success. Okay. So what is success? How do we define success? Is success based purely on financial stability, or is success equally based on contentment? Or is it ideally based upon both of those? Okay, so K2 in its connection to the fourth house, it needs in either of those levels a high degree of, let's start with security, right? It wants its life to be stable. It doesn't want to deal with any material hardships because those material hardships are ultimately only going to create emotional hardships for the individual, right? And so the person begins to, with K2 connected to the fourth house, only stick with the tried and tested modality. This has made things secure and stable for so long. So even though I might want to strive for that, self-employment, or I might want to go for a job that's ultimately more fulfilling, I know this. It keeps my life stable. It's good for my family, another fourth house matter, and it just makes things ultimately really secure and stable. But I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I want that other 10th house thing. Okay. I want that success. I want my life to have a strong foundation in those things that are ultimately very important to me as an individual. And I'm ignoring those things. I don't have those things in my life. So I need to explore more of that 10th house energy and bring more internal fulfillment into my life. Now, that's the side of the axis that goes, okay, internal fulfillment basically is going to make me content. So I need to go pursue the level of success that's based upon internal fulfillment. Let's talk about the material fulfillment side. The person will then, in that particular instance, go, okay, right, this job has been secure and stable, but maybe I'll go look for a new job. Maybe I'll go look for one that has more prestige, that offers me an advance. And maybe in order to do that, I'll leave my secure, stable path and pursue something that seems like it's going to offer me a lot more money. And they'll either succeed at that or they won't, right? Or let's say they succeed in attaining that particular position, only to find out that the material success they were pursuing doesn't bring the emotional fulfillment within. And so they still feel stuck with this idea that, the thing that they were pursuing that they thought was going to bring more material fulfillment and therefore emotional fulfillment didn't promise the emotional fulfillment. It just brought the material fulfillment. So as the nodes relate to the fourth and 10th axis in terms of security and success, we need a little bit of both. Psychologically, let's talk about the fourth and the 10th and the archetypes that it represents. The fourth house represents the archetype of mother. Having a good mothering figure, whether that some people come from families where there's a single parent, regardless of whether that was an environment where the mothering figure was actually the person's mother, because sometimes if you're born into a family with one parent, the father will represent the mother, or maybe the grandmother will represent the mother. And those things show in all sorts of different ways in the horoscope. But the fourth house deals with primarily the mothering figure. So when we've had a really good, strong, solid mothering figure that provides us with a level of emotional stability and emotional security, ultimately, can we can feel content and we can feel secure on a certain level inside of ourselves. But we maybe lived in that instance in a bit of an overly protected environment where, we didn't get an idea of the concept of those things that you really want in life. It may mean having to sacrifice that stable, secure thing that you grew up with in order to go explore things that are seemingly, maybe out of your reach because that 10th house, it's pretty high. Right? The fourth house, it's the support that you're supposed to have. If the person had a mothering figure that wasn't really there for them, then they don't have a strong foundation from which to go explore success. If they had a strong fourth house factor, well, they still need to move beyond it, but they have a greater degree of inner stability from which to go explore those things in life that they really, really want. Now, let's talk about the fathering figure, which is represented by the 10th house. I know everybody here is going to go, isn't father represented by the ninth house? Interestingly enough, the ninth house will tend to show both of the parents together and their influence, the overall parental influence, whereas the 10th house will show the influence of the father. He's that, on a certain level, authority figure. And I know you may go, well, my mother was the authority figure. Well, your mother was being the 10th house figure in your life at that point. It's not confined to gender in that particular way. Okay, so let's say the fathering figure, right? The fathering figure is somebody on a certain level for Ketu and the fourth house people that we see out striving for success. They're striving for that success, the 10th house thing, so they can bring stability to the family, right? Both fourth house things. But quite often that 10th house thing is unseen for those K2 and the fourth house people, or that fathering figure is unseen, or maybe they are seen, but the person hasn't connected to that figure as deeply as they might have liked to. And so they don't get that input from that fathering figure as strongly as they get the input from the motherly figure, right? Not that that's necessarily bad. They just need to strive for that greater level of influence from the fathering figure. And so, how does that relate to the person's life? Well, the mother might have been overly nurturing to the person. So, the fathering figure is going, we need to have more discipline here. If you want these things in your life that are really going to make you happy, you have to be determined, you have to be disciplined, and you have to really strive for those things that you want. In either sense, as we can see through our continuation of our discussion on the nodes, K2 will relate to that thing that we've done before. And sometimes that thing works. We don't want to, kind of get rid of K2 because sometimes we need to be in that space with those things that bring us security and comfort, which I didn't get into this at the beginning, which we should touch on now. So people often understand K2 to bring liberation into an individual's life. And the way K2 brings liberation is we go explore Rahu first. And then we reach a point where we go, I have to retreat for a moment back into K2. Sometimes we're doing that in a split second. Sometimes we're doing it for, several weeks. And a lot of that depends on the person's astrology. But when we retreat back into that space that we know, we're able to integrate the experiences that we just went through. And that gives us the opportunity to evolve, grow, build a firmer foundation, and ultimately evolve. So that's going to do it for our look at Ketu in the fourth house and Rahu in the 10th. Again, if you'd like to explore the nodes in your own personal horoscope, I recommend scheduling either the karmic story consultation or the source and solutions consultation. The difference between the two being the source and solution consultation In addition to a karmic analysis, it also allows time for a couple of extra questions that you might want to explore on a predictive level, and it connects the karmic part to the questions so that it all makes more sense. You can schedule either of those at the link that you'll see up above. Thanks a lot for watching today, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.